everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
We're taking a look at quite a large game here called Feed the Kraken. And it's definitely a large game because it requires a minimum of 5 players. But that's because it's a social deduction game, which is a genre that
I'm tired of. I'll just straight out say that.
It's a genre that I've never really liked, honestly.
Okay, this is going to have to a good start. I was going to say has been overdone to many degrees, although usually social deduction games are fairly small. This is a fairly big box. Blood on the Clock Tower is a big box too, but this one comes with miniatures and stuff. I was kind of...
This is a deluxe edition.
This is the deluxe edition.
Yeah.
There's also one with cardboard tiles or even just it's printed on the board.
Yeah.
You don't really need the minis.
But I'm kind of with Chris. I like social deduction games. I mean, Werewolf I love a ton, and I like the Resistance and things like that. But each time I play one, I'm like, well, that's a spin-off of one of the 3 basic types. There's, Good Cop, Bad Cop, Werewolf, and the Resistance. And it feels like you're a spin-off of one of those 3 types. Well, let's see if this one is like that or not. Here's how it plays. At the beginning of the game, you're going to see how many players you have. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this is going to tell you the roles that you're going to hand out. The blue ones are sailors, the red ones are pirates, the yellow is the cult leader, and in only an 11-player game, there's also just a normal cultist. You're going to take these chips, and I should mention at this point in time that I am showing you the deluxe version of this game. That's the version I have, so that's the one I'm showing you. The components are amazing. But you'll take these chips that you have here, and you're going to place them in little bags. You'll shuffle these bags up, and each person will get a bag, and then they'll open it up and secretly look in it to see what they are. Ooh, I'm a pirate. And that's it. That's the only time you really need to look at it over the course of a game. Now, if you're playing 5 to 7 players, or your first game, whatever, you should play the short journey here, which is this side of the board. The other side of the board is a slightly longer board with a long journey. And you have a pirate ship here, or a ship here. I guess it's not necessarily a pirate ship. It could be a pirate ship. If this ship sails to the pirate victory, the pirates win. If it sails over here, the sailors win. If it sails straight down the middle into the maw of the Kraken, then the cultist wins. And when you hit these spots, you're going to have to vote to throw someone overboard. And if you throw over a cult leader, well, guess what? The cultists win then also. At the beginning of the game, there's a real quick phase where everyone closes their eyes, and then someone just says, hey, pirates, look at each other, and anybody with a pirate ship is going to secretly look at each other. So the pirates know who each other is, and that is it. If there's a cultist and a cult leader, too bad. You just got to figure out what team you're on. Everyone is then going to get a character card. These cards are passed out, including the captain card. If you get the captain card, you set that aside and you'll draw another card. But these are essentially one-time use cards that you can use over the, kind of a special ability over the course of the game. So maybe the smuggler, before a navigation card is drawn, choose a player who is the captain or lieutenant role, and that person draws 3 cards instead of 2, which doesn't really make sense to you right now. But players are going to have these things, and you'll know once you understand the game when to use your card. Players are also going to start with a bunch of pistols that they'll be possibly using in case there's ever a mutiny. The first thing that happens each round is the captain is going to pick the lieutenant and the navigator. These are the tokens in the base game that you would give out. They're going to give those person these tokens. All right, so the captain says, I'm going to appoint John as the navigator and Susan as the lieutenant. Everyone then decides whether they're going to mutiny or not. You're going to put out your fist at the same time with your guns, which will be spent if there's a successful mutiny. A mutiny will happen based on a number of players. So, for example, in an 8 to 9 player game, there needs to be at least 4 guns. If there is, whoever has the most guns, and ties are broken in a specific way, but usually by the current captain, so whoever has the most guns will become the new captain. And that's it. Then they're going to be picking who these 2 people are. But if there's no mutiny, or if there's a successful mutiny and it turns over, either way, we now have 3 roles. We have a captain, we have a lieutenant, and we have a navigator. So in the next phase, this is the navigation phase. What's going to happen is the captain's going to draw 2 cards, and the lieutenant's going to draw 2 cards from a navigation deck that's going to be built based on whether you're playing a long or a short game. They're going to look at these. They're going to throw one of them into the deep sea. So let's say the lieutenant is a good guy, so he's a good sailor, so he throws this one. No one sees what he throws, and he places the other one in the captain's logbook. The captain is a pirate. He doesn't want the cultists to do anything, so he'll put that card in the discard pile and throws this in the captain's logbook. This is then shaken back and forth like this and then given to the navigator. The navigator is going to take a look at these two cards, and then they're going to pick one that is going to be played, and the other one is discarded. They then look at the card that's played. There's two things that matter when a card is played. There is an icon that's on the card here that's going to matter, and then there's a direction here. The direction is going to determine which way the ship goes. Every spot has a red, yellow, or blue arrow on it. Sometimes some of the arrows go the same way. So this one was blue, for example, so the ship will go this direction. If there's an icon on the spot that you go to, so you see that there is a search icon here, you'll deal with that. If there's, like a Cthulhu, I keep saying Cthulhu, but a Kraken figure that you landed, that will matter too when you land on there. And then if there's an icon on the card, like I showed you the drunk icon, then you do that. So for example, that drunk icon means the captain loses their position and whoever has the fewest cards in front of them, because whenever you play a navigation card as a navigator, you put it in front of you, then there's going to be a new captain. There's also mermaids, where someone will shuffle cards together that were played in the past that were discarded and look at them. A telescope lets someone see the next card in the pile. Armed gives you a gun. Disarm makes you lose a gun. And sometimes there's a cult uprising, where the cult leader can secretly pick somebody else who also is a cultist and then will win with them. When you land on this spot here, there's a cabin search, and you will give someone a cabin search token, and then they're going to pass you their bag, and the captain can see what your token is. There's also an off with your tongue thing, which is only on the long side of the board, which means you can no longer be the captain and you can no longer talk. You can just make noise like that. And then there's a flogging there, which will give someone cards, and they give people some information about what they're not. Anyhow, that's pretty much the game. You're picking which direction things go in and the little special abilities. When you land here, players are going to vote to throw someone overboard, which hopefully isn't the cult leader, because if it is, the cultists win. And don't forget, I mentioned that you have these character cards that you can play to use their special abilities. There's one last thing that can happen, and that is the navigator can be like, forget this. I don't like either of these cards. The navigator can then jump overboard. Can't do this. I mean, you can do this if you're the cultist, but you can't win by doing this. The navigator is eliminated from the game, and we have to do an emergency navigator, and there's no mutiny involved in that, and you have to do the whole thing over again. And this is kind of a way that you can stop things from going into the final, place that you might not want to go in. There's a little bit more involved in the game, but those are the basic ideas. Someone is eventually going to win: the pirates, the sailors, or the cultists. So I should ask you guys, do you think this deluxe version is over deluxe?
No, because I think that the amount of miniatures is good. Like, there's not a bajillion. And I think it's really nice. Like, it's nice to have these tactile things. They're like, you are the lieutenant now. Oh, it matches your shirt.
Look at that, yeah.
That's great.
Pin it on him.
I 100% agree, Wendy. I thought when I first saw it, I was like, oh, whatever. But when we played, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of glad everything's so big. It makes the game flow more easily.
Just having to pass these things around, and I'm not sure what the difference, unfortunately, is with all of the component differences, but the little card holders, so that there's designated places for each thing. You're not going to fumble as you're like, ooh, I've got a secret card. Oh, crud! Don't look at it. There's just a lot of thoughtful production that went into this. You pass around those card holders that carry the decks of cards.
This is nice, so you can mix the card in there without it.
I think
moving around.
It's easy to look at miniatures and be like, oh, Chris is going to say this is overproduced. It's a touch, but I don't care about this because this shows restraint and the production shows thoughtfulness, and that's what I like about it.
Okay.
So there's a lot of these games that come out there with the whole hidden roles, which this one is. You don't know who's what. There's happily only a little bit of nighttime stuff. I like nighttime stuff to some degree, but it's difficult to do without accidental cheating happening. You know, if you've ever played One Night Ultimate Werewolf, you know, everyone has to do this the whole time so no one can hear anybody.
Yeah, I hear people
accidentally
moving. We hear people, yeah.
John shifted a card, I heard it.
Yeah.
So that's barely in this game. It's at the very beginning, and then it might happen when a new cultist comes into play. But there is several steps to this game. I didn't mention, but if you're a navigator and lieutenant, then you get off duty in the next turn, so you can't be picked multiple times. But you pick a team, which is similar to the Resistance. You pick a team in that game also. You then look at cards and discard some, which is, well, similar to Battlestar Galactica if you played that. You know,
Secret
you're kind of
Hitler
throwing
is
things.
one of the more popular ones
Sure.
recently that does that as well, yeah.
And there's possibly a mutiny, which is in games like this, also Battlestar Galactica. And then at the end, you then pick the cards and see which direction the ship goes, which I thought was a nice, refreshing difference at the end. It's the goals are, I never sit there and go, who's winning? You just look at the board and see where that ship is.
I think that's what made a difference for me because I actually enjoyed this. Whereas I have, I don't love social deduction games because I feel like it's a whole lot of sitting. There's a lot of that nighttime phase of like, I'm just sitting here quietly with my eyes closed. And then we guess whether or not someone's it. And if they're it, woohoo. If they're not, then eh. But I liked that it was a constant push and pull on the board because then my decisions, I felt like they had more weight than in like, I think it's Secret Hitler where you flip over some good stuff. You might have to put some bad stuff in there if you're a good guy, or you put some good stuff in there if you're a bad guy. I don't know. Visually and having that push and that pull of like, I'm sorry I had to move us towards the pirate side. Oh yeah, secretly I did want it towards the pirate side. But I don't know. I felt like there was more excuses and it was easier to visually see that movement on that track.
Yeah, and the different roles, you have the captain, and then they assign the two different people, and then they pass around cards. That's like a little bit to kind of wrap your head around the first round or two, but you start to get it. It gets more information in the eyes of more people quickly,
Yes.
which I think is super helpful. There's ways to kick the captain around. There's ways to mutiny. All those little things. It makes me think that the designers, the development team on this one, played a lot of social deduction games that sort of work or are fun but are fragile, and then they said, let's kind of chop down to something that works, is a little bit involved, but it's clean. Even when we were reading the rule book, we were laughing because of all the things that said like...
you can't do this, you can't do that because it'd break the game.
Yeah, things that they probably figured out through experience. Like, if you are a good guy, don't pretend to be a bad guy.
Yes, there's no benefit to it. I was amused because almost all those things I've seen people do in other games.
I
Yeah.
may or may not have been one of those people.
Huh. Here's another thing about the game. The three different teams, the cultists, the pirates, and the sailors, I think they feel like you all have a fairly equal chance of winning. Because the sailors, there's more of them. The pirates, there's fewer of them, so they're pushing the ship the other way. But the cultists also kind of wanted to go down the middle, so they're probably pushing against the pirates. And then the cultists, you got to throw, you don't have to throw someone overboard. But if you land in one of those spaces, there's a good chance someone's getting thrown overboard. And at that point, it's, I don't know. Well, I don't want to talk about the cultists because I'm sitting between a couple of them. Or one of you was like, who's a cultist?
Chris was a cultist.
So
I wanted to be a cultist.
Last game, we were both pirates at the start, and then I was converted to the cult, the glorious, glorious cult. So Wendy, so that's the fun dynamic, is that Wendy didn't know. She's like, yeah, me and Chris are in a team, and I'm sitting there. My alliances, my interests have changed a little bit.
And I thought Chris was on my team, but
he
seemed
still looked like
he
a
was
pirate.
Good captain.
I was a great captain.
I think that's another thing that I really appreciate is that you can change sides, but it's not like, oh, I was good, now I'm bad, now the bad team wins. But instead that cultist can have a little bit more people on his team, and I think it's a little bit harder for him to win because there's fewer of him, and so he grows he or she grows their group. So I like that.
And the more cultists there are, the more down the center the ship is going to move, keeping the tension high.
And only the cult leader has to be thrown over, though, not one of the cultists. So
Yeah.
you were a cult if we had thrown you over, but he was a captain, and we pointed to someone who seemed obviously a pirate, and they were not. They were a cultist, and we threw them overboard. Cultist wins. I don't know. This game was also not long, although I would almost always play on the short side. Although I don't think I would. If someone said I want to play on the long side, it's 2 more rounds. It's not that long.
Sure.
This feels. I hate to keep banging a dead horse on this sometimes, beating a dead horse.
There you go.
That this whole, is this better than Battlestar Galactica because it's faster and shorter, but this does feel a lot like Battlestar Galactica in a much shorter period of time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, I know some people want that, but I think the theme helps here. There is the Kraken theme. You get this cool theme where you're going down and you're throwing people out maybe, and even that whole idea where the navigator could be like, see y'all, and jump overboard and die, but that could win you the game.
I love that. That definitely seems like
It's almost cartoony.
It is
Yeah.
for king and country, just bailing out of the ship. Like, I
Right,
will not.
If you're a sailor and you draw 2 pirates, you'd be like, draw again.
Yeah. But you can't just keep doing that if you're, good sailers, because then you're running out of good sailors.
Well, you
Yeah.
would only do it, I think, on the last turn.
Yeah, you got to
Right.
do it
It's
as a Hail
a
Mary.
lose or
Yeah.
win situation.
The guns. So the voting out the captain. If you don't like the captain, you can put your hand out and you can drop guns and whatever. I don't like that mechanism in the Resistance because I feel like then people are just like, oh, it's finally my turn. I got skipped. Like, that's how I feel. But in this, because there's so few guns that you get throughout the game, you're not wasting them. And so you're picking those moments, I think, more rarely than in Resistance. And I'm saying the right game, right?
Yes,
I
you
don't play these games. Just want to clarify. But you're doing it less. And so I appreciate that there is that economy of the guns preventing you from just constantly being like, nah, skip you, nah, skip you, nah, skip you.
Yeah.
I like how you brought up economy into this game.
Well,
But it's a good
Economy of Kraken.
it is, but I get it. You want to do something fun. In this game, you could be skipped a lot, but because of the people being off duty, so the captain's forced to pick other people, and sometimes the captain gets drunk with a card, which then makes it go to the person who has the least cards. So if you've not been playing, it might be you, and so you're going to get to play. And even still, you're involved in every decision. The game plays pretty quickly. You're not going to be sitting around bored. And if there's any player elimination, which it's you chose it.
Yeah.
You chose to jump overboard.
Yes.
And if if you get thrown to the Kraken, well, the game's over the next turn anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for me, I like this a lot. This is solid. It's a good game. Again, take my rating into the effect that I'm not as big on social deduction games as I once was. But this is an 8 for me. I find it to be fun. It's quick. It's simple. Holds a lot of players. Looks beautiful. This is in the top tier of social deduction games for me.
Okay, I'm going to give this a 7 because it's a social deduction game that I actually enjoyed, which is a surprise for me. I like that there's enough board gamey stuff going on that I feel like I have real decisions. I like that you, once again, don't get skipped too often, that there's plenty of times to participate. There's not a lot of downtime. So I think that there's a lot of good choices and real thought that went into this.
I'm also giving this one an 8. I thought that this is a really great final product. I like the way that it looks, and even if you're not going to get the deluxe one, then I think the game will still function just fine. But I think that the thoughtfulness in the physical production, the thoughtfulness and just how good this map looks, just everything about it looks really darn good. And then just there are layers of decisions that aren't overwhelming. Even though you have 2 pirate cards, they might have different effects. So which one you put in the box for consideration will have some impact. So even when there's what looks like no choice in a lot of these other social deduction games, there's some choice in there. And I really like that. So I think they did a great job. I'm very impressed with it. That's an 8 from me.
Well, there you go. That is Feed the Kraken. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
Feed the Kraken. Hey, everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
Got it. Forgot.
Your name?
I just forgot the order for a second. All right.
Got it. You should save this clip for the end of your thing.